And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Monday morning. We've got marginal VFR here from the Bering Sea right on up into the interior here, with IFR north slope out to the Arctic coast and some here along the north coast of the Seward Peninsula up Clipping Point Hope area, and more marginal VFR for the southeast coast into the Gulf of Alaska. VFR though, Kodiak Island into south central Alaska, mainly the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, and Prince William Sound, portions of the Copper River Basin, and the eastern interior south of the Brooks Range looking pretty good. For the afternoon, VFR continues for Kodiak on up into Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, and the Kenai Peninsula. Prince William Sound as well. Manaska Valley, marginal VFR as well as the North Gulf Coast and most of the Alaska Range here. And then some VFR north of Bristol Bay there into the southern Kuskokwim Valley. Marginal for the Panhandle, IFR, central eastern Arctic coast, on down into the central north slope there to the Brooks Range. And that next system and the band of IFR here into the central southern Bering Sea, and from about just east of Amchitka Island tomorrow afternoon sliding in toward the eastern Aleutians. That area pushes a little farther to the east for Tuesday morning into the Alaska Peninsula there, back across the Pribilof Islands, but north of the Aleutian chain. And then to the northeast here, VFR across much of southern Alaska. Marginal VFR now up toward the central Alaska Range, north and northwest, up to the western Brooks Range, and quite an area of IFR now for the North Slope and Arctic coast. And some improvement there for the southeast coast, VFR over the northern 2/3 or 3/4 of the area there. And then for the afternoon, complete VFR, Dixon entrance right on up along the North Gulf Coast. And then the system out here pushing eastward, spreading moisture right up across IFR, coming across Kodiak Island throughout the day and into southern Cook Inlet, but improving there to marginal VFR later in the afternoon for Kodiak and Bristol Bay. Marginal VFR conditions following this band of IFR in behind all the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea, and pretty good VFR in the central interior down into the Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, and then on the southern slopes of the Brooks Range northward there, marginal VFR becomes IFR on out toward the Arctic coast, and IFR holds here for the Panhandle. And for the passes, Anatuvik and Adigan both look pretty marginal for the day on Monday. Same forecast for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, also for rainy and windy marginal conditions there. And for Isabel, same thing, marginal VFR, but Mentasta, VFR, and then back to marginal VFR for Tanita, as well as Portage and Chilkoot and White. From there, looking at the freezing levels, 4,000 feet here over much of interior Alaska into the Gulf, and then about 6,000 to 8,000 feet there over the southeast coast, 4,000 feet up near St. Lawrence Island, and about 6,000 to 8,000 or 10,000 feet over the west central Aleutians. Icing that next system coming in, bringing an area of considerable moderate rime icing here with it, pushing eastward and a little bit to the northeast tomorrow, with icing chances increasing for the Pribilof Islands and over toward the eastern Aleutians to about False Pass. Another area of moisture here could kick off some isolated moderate rime or mixed icing over the interior areas. And also here over the southeast coast, this area shifting off, so look for icing potential to diminish throughout the day. And from there, looking at the jet stream, good southwest flow or west-southwesterlies at about 80 knots. That'll help push that icing off to the east eventually. Otherwise, got a jet streak here out of the northwest. Jet streak, just an area of the strong winds here, about 125 knots blowing across the Alaska Peninsula. Another jet streak out here to the west, 135 to 145 knots out of the west. And for 9,000 feet, strongest winds, mostly along and south of the Aleutians there, 70 to 80 knots. And then we've got westerly winds coming around this low center up there near the Koyukuk Valley at about 25 to 35 knots or so, not too bad. 35 knot winds blowing across Kodiak, Alaska, and westerlies 20 to 30 knots into the Panhandle, with the stronger winds down across the Queen Charlottes. And then for the day on, for 3,000 feet for Monday, low pressure here, kind of a wave along that frontal boundary. This area maximum or higher wind associated with a front pushing off to the southeast there. So it's becoming quite light here for the Panhandle. 35 knot westerlies here coming across from Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. 25 for Kodiak Island, maybe 30 knots here, or 25 to 30 knots there over the Yukon Delta. And pretty light up to the north. And then out here to the west, we've got 60 knot winds, but that's south of the Aleutians there, but 45 or 25 knot winds coming into the eastern areas. And turbulence, look for considerable moderate turbulence there with that next storm coming into the central Aleutians, about Adak eastward into close to Nikolsky tomorrow afternoon. And then with that northwest wind flow here with a higher pressure over Bristol Bay, we've got light to isolated moderate turbulence there in the forecast for Kodiak Island, mostly mechanical, especially for smaller aircraft. And most of the turbulence looks like it'll stay south of the Panhandle out that way.